Hi, everyone. My name is Marwa Mitchell, and I'm a coach at the Plant Medicine People. I'm excited to be with you today talking about the language of the subconscious mind and particularly focused on dreams. So, you may wonder why the Plant Medicine People would put on a webinar about dreams. Clearly, we all share a love of the plants here, but the idea is that by developing that communication between our subconscious mind and our conscious mind, we create stronger pathways for communication from not only our dreams, but from our plant medicine teachers and our higher selves as well. So, just a brief background on myself. My journey with the plants began 20 years ago with our favorite the mushrooms. I had no idea what I was getting into at the time, but they came in and they shook up everything in my world. I thought it was going to be fun. That's what everyone told me. But it definitely was a very serious and a lot of hard work being with the mushrooms. At the time, I had no idea about plant consciousness. It hadn't really dawned on me the full scale of their teaching and mastery until I found ayahuasca in 2013. I've been fully immersed in plant medicine work since then, sitting in many cycles with ayahuasca, but also working with master plant dietas and now focusing on integration work and past life regression hypnosis. Also, another amazing tool for us to access our subconscious in addition to plant medicine and dream work. I also have another side of me. I'm a student of psychology and a big fan of Carl Jung specifically. And we'll see that he enters the chat a few times in our conversation today. Since Jung believed that dreams were the door to the subconscious, and he would focus on that work, the dream work, in his patient sessions quite a bit. His work on archetypes and the collective meaning of dreams is just a great foundational tool for us as we dive into this work. So, with that said, let's jump into our topic today, which is unlocking the language of our subconscious through dreams. We'll be covering a few different topics today. So, we're going to talk about what our subconscious minds are and what are its language. We'll talk about dreams as a gateway to our subconscious mind and why we should work with them. We'll talk about dream interpretation, common meanings, and ways to interpret our dreams, ways to enhance our dream space, which is techniques and setting intention as well. We'll discuss integration of dreams and plant medicine integration and how they work together. And then finally, we wouldn't be the plant medicine people if we didn't talk about plants that enhance our dream space. So, all right, well, let's dive in then. So, what are dreams and where do dreams come from? So, dreaming as a gateway to the spiritual realms is a concept that's been expressed repeatedly across indigenous and ancient cultures since the beginning of time. And from a modern psychology perspective, we have Jung and Freud who believed that the mysteries that are held deep within us, so what we call our subconscious mind, or what Jung actually called the unconscious mind, but it's the same thing, come into consciousness or awareness specifically by working and interpreting the metaphors, symbols, and emotions that show up in our dreams. So there's this deep thread between culture and science, and like the idea that dreams aren't random, but carefully crafted stories and experiences that reflect our inner world. And I remember hearing that the author of our dreams, that which is coming up with our dreams, is like an artist. So as we start to get deeper and deeper into the meanings and work with them over time, we start to realize the divine perfection of these stories and symbols. It reminds me so much of how plants work with us as well. The stories are just so personalized, they're so customized, and they hold so many layers of meaning. So, this artist, it asks us to notice the patterns in our life, the magic around us in our worlds that we interact with on a daily basis. And it like seeks to balance our expressions. So it'll seek to balance sort of masculine and feminine, yin and yang. understanding the symbols in our dreams is truly like a critical piece of the puzzle, and it paves the way for growth and healing and spiritual connection as well. So, indigenous culture has a deeply spiritual view of the dream space. Similar to our plant medicine experiences, dreams are sacred communication from the divine realm. So it conveys messages from spirit guides, our plant teachers. I personally had plants come into my dreams and provide messages like pre or post ceremony work or during master plant dietas. I've had them come in. It's a place where the veil is lifted and we enter into other dimensions that are inaccessible to us in our waking lives. Some Native American tribes, the Iroquois, for example, they believed that dreams are the language of the soul and that these dreams will show hidden desires or needs within us. They have this daily ritual for dream sharing, and they'd sit around and interpret the messages, like not only for the member of the tribe that's asking about the dream specifically, but for the community as a whole. So you can see that they thought the dreams had this connectedness as well. So it's not just a message for one person, but for the tribe as a whole. In Australian Aboriginal culture, there's this concept of the dreaming, which is really important and represents not just the dreams, right? And going into other dimensions, prophetic visions, things like that. But they believe that dreams are where creation happens. So the ancestors created the world in the dream space. So dreams serve as a connection to the sacred time of creation as well, which is really beautiful. And then, of course, like shamanistic traditions in the Amazon, they use dreams to reveal medicinal plant locations, prophesize, guide healing ceremonies, or connect with ancestors. Dreams are a space for spiritual travel to other realms for knowledge. So the idea across these cultures and across time is that dreams serve as a place of personal and community guidance, that they maintain spiritual connection, and that in these dreams, time and space doesn't exist. So you're outside of the construct, you're outside of the matrix. From a Western perspective, Carl Jung believed that our dreams are the main entry point to our subconscious mind. That's the part of us that holds all of our memories and traumas, but it also connects us to this collective field. So you might hear of it called the quantum field, the Akashic records, but the concept that all of us are also connected to sort of this cloud or divinity, right? Whatever you call it. Within this collective holds our highest, most evolved self as well, since it sits outside of time and space. What you may have heard of this higher self also allows us to access information that we may not have access to in our waking time as well. Dreams have access to the subconscious mind, which includes all of our experiences from this lifetime, but everything else that connects us to everyone else and everything else as energy, as a one energy or divinity. He really believed that the key to spiritual and personal growth is working with our shadow elements to bring our shadow and light together. And by light, I don't mean like only good things. It's just consciousness, right? So this bringing of the veiled side of us to consciousness allows us to actually reach wholeness, or what he called individuation. And individuation is the process through which an individual becomes a unique whole person by integrating the conscious and the unconscious aspects of the psyche. The idea is that when we become our unique selves, is when we can express our divinity truly and authentically. We're all one of a kind, right? Everyone that's been on earth is one of a kind. They're all unique. The best part of this shadow side that I love, something that I love, is that, like I said, it isn't just like the light isn't all light. The darkness isn't all darkness, which it sounds like positive and negative, but that's not the way it is. Jung talks about this idea of the golden shadow that's hidden behind the veil as well. That while we're doing our work of bringing this unconsciousness to consciousness, we will discover superpowers in there as well. Like if you loved playing piano, for example, when you were younger, but because of a trauma or something stopped you, basically, working with that trauma or that time during that stopping period may bring up this love of music again. And so it brings to light a forgotten expression of ourselves. Again, brings like authenticity. So dreams were the main way that Jung would work with his patients. Like imagine going into Jung's office and he would sit there and listen to your dreams and help you interpret them. He viewed dreams as the primary gateway to the psyche, which was the area needing to be explored for spiritual growth. So working with our dreams brings us into wholeness, which is a really big statement, right? So why aren't we like all obsessed with working with our dreams? I mean, if they're going to just bring us into wholeness and move us towards enlightenment, that's like a bit complicated and it takes a lot of dedication. Dreams don't speak to us in language. They don't speak in English, they don't speak in Spanish or whatever you're fluent in. Dreams have a very unique way of speaking to us through images, symbols, archetypes, and emotion. Our subconscious mind responds to us and it really wants to work with us. It's designed to help us move forward, but we have to intentionally build a bridge with that part of us to maximize the time that we have here. We're only alive for 80 years, right? And working with our dreams allows us to create this map between the veiled and the unveiled parts of ourselves. We dream every night. So it's adding in that extra 8 hours of work, of moving forward. And that's a key element here, is that the idea that we're bringing the unconscious into consciousness, right? To create wholeness, enlightenment, or what Jung called individuation, right? So this authenticity that is us can shine. And Jung famously quotes that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So it really tells you, that quote really at least tells me the difference that this work has on our perceptive reality, what we see and how we process it. So before we dive into actually working with our dreams, I just want to say that really our dreams are a compass for us to keep us centered. What is reality? Is it our waking hours or is it our dreaming hours? We sleep and we're connected with this movie maker, but who is the movie maker? It really feels like it's the essence of who we are outside of this illusion, this construct. Dreams don't separate us, right, from the objects around us like waking reality does. We become what we see in our dreams. That beautiful oak tree, that's a representation of us. The owl becomes a representation of our inner wisdom. So it really has this connectedness that we don't necessarily have in our waking hours. So where do we start working with our dreams? I want to say first and foremost that working with our dreams is a journey. It's a process that deepens with time. It's like becoming fluent in a whole nother language. So Jung encouraged people to actively engage with their dreams through techniques like dream journaling, of course, and active imagination. So interpreting these symbols not as fixed meanings out of a dictionary, which may be how we all started, but looking at everything that happens in our dreams from a very personal lens. It's not all collective meanings. I mean, those have a place, and we'll talk about a few that are common in a second, but getting started to intentionally work with dreams, it really may seem like a daunting task at first. I remember when I was 15, I think I was 15, I brought my first dream dictionary and I was really excited to work with it. But very soon, like I just felt a little overwhelmed and confused. It was the same feeling that I had when I started reading tarot. The dictionary provided an overview of what the symbols meant, right? They were pulling on this collective, but it felt really impersonal. Like it didn't make any sense to me. I wasn't connecting the meanings of, the meanings of the symbols with what I was experiencing. And the story just didn't come together in a way that felt true to me. I wasn't using my intuition deeply at that point either. And so the dictionary was showing me common or collective meanings of the symbols, like I said, but it just wasn't taking into account my experience culturally or personally into account. It just didn't feel like it. So in working with my dreams later in life, I've discovered that the technique of interpreting my dreams requires a deeply intentional process, a process that creates a relationship between my subconscious and conscious mind and creates like this sincere desire to hear what's being conveyed. So we're going to explore a few different techniques to use when working with the symbols, metaphors, archetypes we come across in our dreams. But before I jump in there, I want to go through a few of the common themes that we come across in our dream space. And they're pretty fun. Like these particular meanings seem to have more of a collective connection to people. And so again, the dreams are you talking to yourself. So a lot of the interpretation can vary. Interpretation is a knowingness inside of you. But I'm going to go through some of the common ones and how dictionaries will typically interpret them, whether it resonates with you or not. So for example, like water really resonates with me, the meaning of water. So falling down is the idea that we're losing control or losing grip over something. It can mean failure or feeling overwhelmed by something. Falling causes a very certain emotion more than the falling itself. So we pay attention to the feelings that we have when we're falling. When I fall, I often feel dread. So it feels like a roller coaster, almost like, oh, here we go again, and I close my eyes and I bear it, I bear the feeling, but it's that emotion of like, here we go again, that is just as powerful as the actual feeling of falling. One of my favorite dreams, one of the favorite few times I've had this dream is when I'm flying. And if you've ever experienced flying, most people feel very positive after a flying dream. It feels really good. It feels freeing. I never want the dreams to stop. Flying typically means freedom and a desire to be released or feeling released from constraints. It's always interesting to know what's going on in my life when I have a flying dream, which I have, like I said, less flying dreams than I'd love. But my favorite flying dream had to do with me being a firework. I flew up like a rocket, like I was flying, I flew up like a rocket, and then I exploded into this firework. And it felt like a very Phoenix-like moment. I could be seen miles away from everybody. It was like this enormous firework, and it felt like either a deep desire to express my authenticity or feeling like I was seen. So it was really beautiful, but it was even more so than the freedom. There was more emotion there that came out in that dream of flying. So water often represents our emotions or even our unconscious mind. Is the water clear? Is it murky? Is it choppy? Is it calm? All of those elements about the water represent its messaging of it. So if you dream of tsunamis like I do, it's this feeling of being overwhelmed by the wave that's about to hit me. But I'm always really calm watching it because there's nothing I can do. And I know I'm going to die. So it is what it is. But as I continued to work with that dream, because it was a recurring dream, I started interacting with the tsunami. We'll talk about active imagination and how you can interact with these things that show up. And it was telling me more than just that I'm about to get overwhelmed or I don't like the feeling of being emotionally overwhelmed. It was inviting me to get in the water and swim and ride that wave versus get pummeled by it, right? So it was telling me to get more in touch with my feelings so it didn't turn into a tsunami or I wouldn't feel it as a tsunami. That practice, it took time for me to work with that. And working with my feelings daily has really changed my life. And now I really don't have those tsunami dreams as much because I followed that message. But say you grew up near the ocean, right? And you love water. Well, water could have a very different meaning for you, right? It can represent being home, being safe. So again, these collective meanings are wonderful and can give us a foundation for interpreting the meanings, but it's most important to work with these things from a deeply personal level. Being naked is another one. That's one that shows up on the collective, and it's vulnerability. It's feeling ashamed. It's feeling exposed. It can center around judgment, or it could mean that even that you have a strong desire to feel authentic, but you could be scared of being seen. There could be fear there about being authentic or being seen for who you truly are. One of the most uncomfortable dreams is the horror of your teeth falling out. If you've had these teeth falling out dreams, I've had them twice, and it feels awful. It feels really powerless and helpless, and because they just crumble in your mouth. This could be actually a fear of aging, which is interesting. It could also be a fear of losing your appearance or even losing face in front of other people. It could be social embarrassment around aging, things like that. So it's an interesting one. Animals are very interesting because they have a strong collective meaning as totems as well. And they're rooted in indigenous religious traditions. And so something like a snake, for example, can be very positive in indigenous tradition and very shadowy in religious tradition. In the case of animals, I love to interact with them through active imagination. Again, we'll talk about that. But also I love to see what the interpretations are for these totems. I have some cards, some totem cards that I work with as well. And I feel very connected to those meanings. It feels like the animal is giving me a message. So you could look at religious interpretations if that you're drawn to that as well. But animals have a great way of there's a bunch of different ways to interact with animals when you see them come into your dreams and ask them what their message is for you. Finally, there's this idea of archetypes that show up in our dream, and you may be familiar with the concept of archetypes. They are associated with Jung again, but archetypes are universal, like they're symbolic figures that represent aspects of our human experience, and they're deeply embedded in our collective. So these archetypes are like characters with specific qualities shared across culture and time. So think of like the Greek gods and goddesses or the major arcana of a tarot deck. You have the hero, the lovers, the devil, like the trickster kind of energy. These are like elements of dark and light in these characters. There's elements of masculine and feminine in these archetypes. They'll appear in our dreams as themes or the stories themselves, and they'll offer valuable insights into our psychological state. Paying attention to the story in the dream from the perspective, from like an archetypal angle, is actually a very powerful method for interpretation as well. So I'm going to give you an example. When I was a child, I'd have dreams of being chased by a devil or a demon or something like that. And it would corner me and I wouldn't be able to speak. And the dream would often end with me being terrified in a corner, cornered by it, mute, unable to fend it off. Over time, I'm talking like years and years, and doing inner work and growth, having spiritual growth, I was able to speak more and more to this devil. Now, I hadn't connected that this devil was anything specific or connected it through to my work at all. But when I did, I realized that it had to do with a specific shadow that I was working with. And me being unable to speak to it was a representation of me not wanting to talk to it or allow it to become part of myself, to integrate. I was like resisting integration. I didn't even want to interact with it. So the last time I had a dream of this devil, which was many years later, probably like less than 10 years ago, but I haven't had it recently, but I was able to sing to it. And it just stared at me, like it didn't go anywhere, but I was able to sing to it, which felt like a release. Like it felt like I was communicating with it. And I'm not quite sure if it's fully integrated yet, because again, it didn't go away or anything like that. But it, like I said, it felt like it represented the shadow, a very specific shadow. It was an archetypal representation of the shadow, is what I'm saying is what I'm saying here. So the devil was a representation of something, and it was a story that continued on. So it wasn't just about that one dream. There was a full continuation with it, and it's still going, I think. We'll see. So we've discussed the language of dreams and that they aren't spoken in regular language. They're not spoken in English. And that they're deeply symbolic, they're emotional, they're metaphorical, and that they express themselves through like imagery, feelings, archetypes. And they bypass the logical filters of our left brain. They aren't linear communications. And they come in the form of like intuition, and they pull from this collective dictionary. They're really complicated, as well as like deeply personal symbols that mean something to you, that take into account your culture, the context of your background and your history and your cultural background, etc. The subconscious also communicates through repressed and neglected feelings. Okay, so that's also something that it will communicate through, such as anger, like sadness. And these arise in dreams or, in symbolic form. So understanding this language really requires sensitivity to the nuances of these symbols and an open, non-judgmental awareness of the emotions that they evoke. I want to like really emphasize the idea that this work requires a non-judgmental stance. Our psyches are very sensitive to judgment and resistance. And like they'll show themselves best in a loving, objective environment. So we try to have that as we're working with them. So understanding what these mean to you often requires using our intuition and working through our emotions and feelings to create personal reference points and a map from our subconscious to our conscious minds. So each of us is really creating our own personal dream dictionary, basically. There's this uniqueness in the communication. And it, like I said, it draws upon your cultural background and experiences. It's all very deliberate. Like what we're shown is so intentional. It's not random. It carries emotional weight and it needs to show us something particular or to integrate an emotion. That's why when you're triggered by a small comment during the day, it may show up mirrored as a memory from your childhood with the same feeling connected to it, or it'll show up as an exaggerated form of the emotion in our dreams. So, for example, like if you embarrass yourself in front of your boss the day or earlier that week, it could show up in our dreams as being naked, right? And it would have that same, it would be evoking that same embarrassment. So working with our dreams can we start to track our daily events too and how they appear. And we'll start to see the way that our emotions and those repressed feelings might be being communicated to us. I mean, like observation is always the first step, right? So let's talk about something really important. This is very much so at the heart of this conversation. And it's about not only working with our dreams, but working about with our dreams with intention and creating an environment where we're preparing to work with our dreams. Because just like with plant medicines, working with our dreams and our subconscious minds requires the same dedication that we show our plant medicine ceremonies or any spiritual work we do. So I'll often create a specific time to deeply work with my dreams and focus on them. Working with my dreams ebbs and flows. I don't do it all the time. It's one of the tools in my toolkit, which includes working with plants. Like I said, it could be working with cacao and morning meditation, but sometimes it's working intensely with my dreams. And I'll do it for like a span of 2 weeks. And these deep, intensive times of intentionally focusing on my dreams are a way of connecting to my higher self. And they enhance the other things that I do, all the other work I do. Like, of course, if I have a profound dream after ayahuasca ceremony, I love it. I write it down. But my intensive work within the dream space really deepens over time. So working with our dreams intensively in a dedicated manner can enhance our dream space as we're doing all the other work. And creating intention with our dreams creates a response from our subconscious that we are ready. It's like a switch that comes on, like a go switch. So creating bedtime rituals, super important as well. Again, this all goes into sort of intention and creating sort of a reverent space for this work. I work with specific plants to enhance my dream space, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. That creates like a beautiful container that signals to my subconscious that I'm intentionally ready to hear what it has to say. And this storyteller, my subconscious, seems to really respond to these rituals and intentions. So creating a sacred space for our sleep and honoring its importance, which is like maybe honoring a certain bedtime hour, or it could be turning off all your devices, 1 or 2 hours before going to bed. It could also be reading or listening to beautiful music to relax your body and mind beforehand. It creates all of that creates a respectful and reverent atmosphere and a seriousness to this work. And plants have this way of responding to ritual and respect as well, and reverence, right? Putting in the work before ceremony, for example, creates this just a more harmonious time for us when we're in her presence, when ayahuasca's presence, for example, or the mushrooms presence. I've noticed if I'm really open to ayahuasca before ceremony, she always pays me back tenfold. It's like I prepared myself respectfully, reverently to receive her, and I'm honoring her. And our subconscious minds, our higher selves, respond the exact same way. So let's dive into some of the methods to start analyzing our dreams. First of all, our dreams are very fleeting, right? How many times have you woken up from sleep and it felt like, you felt the dream so intensely, but then you couldn't remember what it was about? Or you wake up in the middle of the night with the dream, but you don't remember it in the morning. It's super frustrating when you start, but it will get better. It will get better with time, and the messaging will get stronger when we work with dreams in this intentional way. It goes without saying that obviously journaling and capturing what happened is the most important action to take. So keeping a journal next to your bed, writing down fragments of the dream, the emotions, anything you saw, whatever. It doesn't need to be in a sentence structure. You can do it in the morning. You can fill in all the gaps in the morning or when you start journaling. So it doesn't need to be sentence structure. But this is another reason why working with dreams for a few weeks makes sense, is that you don't necessarily want to live your life turning on the lights at 2 a.m. to write down fragments, but it's really helpful to capture these things as soon as you can, especially when you get started, when you start. And recording dreams, of course, is very important as well. So that means that you take the time during your day to sit down with what you've recorded and expand on it, right? So journaling to write down everything you remember, including the order of things as they happened, as you remember them, if you can. Emotions are very important here as well. What do you feel today during your day? It may not be obvious how it relates to your dream, but when we wake up with a feeling, that's just as important as remembering the story. So I'm going to say something kind of controversial, and this is that interpreting your dreams isn't necessary right away. So it's similar to plant medicine integration. Sometimes this is a process, right? And it doesn't necessarily happen in the mind first. Like interpreting your dream may not happen because you understand it right away. But the free writing process, the process that I'm talking about, which is capturing what happened, expanding on it, itself has a purpose over time. And many times in my experience, it's actually the emotions that I'm feeling that pull the thread of a greater story, not the meaning of the story first. Like it doesn't have to be verbal, is what I'm trying to say. So as you write, as you journal daily, say on day 3, 4, 5, are you starting to notice patterns? Are there connections between what happened in your day and the dream itself? Are there prevalent feelings? So you can have like 3 different dreams, 3 nights in a row, but they seem to all be around something very specific. You wake up feeling frustrated, for example, like all 3 nights are about just doing really frustrating things. Like one night you couldn't open a door. The next night you were running in place. You just woke up really frustrated. That obviously is something, right? So you can see a connection over time. And when I first started doing this work with intention and in sort of these intensive 2-week spurts, I'd work with my dreams for 2 weeks and didn't really reflect on things just yet. Like I may have had hints that certain things were connecting, or I may have known, and I'd write those connections down, but I didn't get deep into it until the end. So when I revisited that 2 weeks, it was absolutely fascinating. I could see patterns and I could see changes in the weeks and how I was how my subconscious was talking to me. And I also could see how it tied into my day to day, which I had never really seen that before. So it is truly learning a new language. So be patient with yourself in the process. It deepens with time and practice. As we start to break down our dreams in the reflection stage, so say daily, weekly, we start to figure out what these stories and these images mean to us. We do this through meditating on these images or symbols, asking the images what they mean through active imagination, or doing free word association. So I'll go through each of those with you. Meditation after journaling to see and feel what comes up for you. Maybe you meditate right after the dream and before you start journaling. Either way, it's like a passive process that allows clarification or downloads to come through us with the intention of understanding more about our dream. Meditating after a dream can sometimes even continue the dream emotionally. So follow that feeling and see where it takes you. Active imagination. So Jung did this where he'd have people re-enter into their dreams. I mean, they were awake, but they would re-enter into their dreams in sort of this meditative state and start actively interacting with various elements of the dream. So say, for example, you have a dream where you're sitting in front of a fire. What you would do is you would re-enter your dream through sort of this meditation, this guide, and you'd re-enter the dream and start talking to the fire to see what it has to tell you. So it's a very like intuitive, heavy process where you would envision the fire and be able to actively interact with it. It's a very powerful way of engaging our subconscious to continue the story, because the subconscious, again, doesn't say like, oh, hey, this is what I was trying to tell you, directly. But engaging through the fire allows it to speak with you in a way where you can ask it questions and it responds. So you would ask these dream figures, these images, in this case, the fire, what it represents, like why it appeared, what it wants from you. And so again, it's a really powerful way of being able to get answers that is coming from you. It's not coming from a dictionary. And if it sounds intimidating, there are many YouTube videos out there that will guide you through an active imagination exercise, if that speaks to you. Spotify as well has quite a few different meditations or sessions where you can go through to guide you through an active imagination exercise. So check them out if that's something that speaks to you. That might be a really great way to give it a shot through a guided. It's one of my favorite ways. Free word association is writing down the first 3 or 4 things that come to mind with the image as you sit with it in journaling. So you dream of a bird and you immediately write like wind, freedom, eagle. So that's a thread for you to pull on. Eagle's a totem too, so you can look that up. So there's a lot of ways you can interact with the wind in active imagination. There's a lot of ways you can work with that free word association as well. And then of course, like finally, you can always look at dictionaries, see if they resonate with you. I mean, it's fun to when an image that you have matches sort of a dictionary, because then it's like you're tapping into that collective consciousness as well. But again, it might be the last thing that you do because you don't want to you don't want to interfere with what that might mean to you personally. So you might want to do the other things first before you go to a dictionary and see what it means to get additional clarification. And then we discussed archetypes as well. And people can show up in archetypal form. So did the characters that were in your dream represent something greater? Or what was their purpose? So like if you dreamt about high school classmates, for example, what do those people mean to you? Is it something bigger than just a representation of these people? So are they showing up as like the archetype of the fool from tarot, right? Sort of naive, getting out into the world, open, because that's kind of what it felt like in high school. So it could have this archetypal meaning. So feel into why these people show up, and only you'll know the answer, right? You'll feel it. On the emotional side, we identify the feeling of the dream during the dream, and then the feelings we've had upon waking up, and then the feelings that are carried over during the day. It's just like incredible how a dream can set the emotional tone for the day and to see it play out. And these emotions are a clue of our emotional state, or perhaps like even a state that needs to be expressed or released. So we can somatically release these feelings as well as we work with them. Where do we feel these emotions? So sitting with those emotions, following them in our bodies, seeing what words or thoughts come up as we feel these feelings. All of that is deeply powerful work that can pull the thread on other shadows from my experience. So some final questions that we ask ourselves, like around emotions, like before we move on, have you felt these feelings from the dream in your current life events? Were they in past life events? Maybe you're facing the same emotions, but very different scenarios. So again, these can lead us to areas that threads that we can pull to continue deepening not only the dream experience, but also deepening our spiritual growth and understanding of ourselves. The setting in our dream can symbolize different aspects of your inner world. For example, like houses can represent the self, and even different floors can represent different like areas of your psyche. So the basement could represent like repressed fears. The attic could represent like hidden knowledge or wisdom. Just like an anecdote that I experienced was actually on a mushroom journey, and I was outside for this journey. But the mushrooms kept telling me it was time to go in the house now because we were in the backyard. And I was really afraid to go inside. It's my house. I don't have any fear of my house, but for some reason I was really afraid to go inside. What I came to understand through that journey was that the house represented my heart. So when I said I was afraid to go in my house, what I was saying was that I was afraid to journey into my heart in that moment and see what was inside. So now I have a map. When I see a house, and it can be in my dream, it can be it could be connected, the plants, they use the same language. And so again, that's part of my dictionary, and a house now is my heart. So either the plants or my subconscious mind can use that symbol as a way for me, as a way to communicate with me about my heart. So there's actually, interestingly, as we continue to work with our dreams, we'll start to see that there's this interplay between our waking hours and our sleep time as well. We'll start to link, it'll start to link up, and it will come through, as Jung said, that it came through as synchronicities, for example, between dreams and our waking hours. So as we continue to work with our dreams and as we have better dream recall, we'll start noticing that there's an interplay between our dream world and our waking life. And so that dream journaling is really going to help to start to observe that, because now you're recalling, right? Our waking states definitely influence our dreams, but I also believe that our dream states influence our waking hours. So as we get to the end of this talk, I want to talk about a few things that can create influence as well on our dreams. So starting to notice our sleep patterns, for example, what wake up time is best for remembering our dreams in full. You want to test and retest what works for you. Body positioning, I find I personally dream better on my back. I don't know why, but is there a certain position that works best for you? Can you train yourself to be in this position more? I have to actively want to be on my back to find myself laying there in the morning, but it works. I can train myself to do it with intention and with a few pillows strategically placed around me. So dreams can also be influenced, of course, they can be influenced by food, medication, environmental factors. Like I don't dream well when I sleep in a strange place, like a hotel. Like I don't sleep very well. So I know that I probably won't have great dreams. I won't really have much recall if I'm at a hotel, for example. And if you're having trouble remembering your dreams, there are definitely some things that you can try. There are actually a lot of things. This is not an exclusive list at all, because there's a lot of things that you could try actually. But here's a couple that I thought were interesting to mention here. So we remember our dreams when we're just about to transition out of REM to a lighter sleep stage. And this naturally occurs around 90 minutes before our usual wake up time. So if you're having a really hard time recalling your dreams, you can set your alarm maybe 90 minutes beforehand, and when you most likely catch them so that you can remember them. So that way you'll catch yourself before you cycle out of REM into that lighter stage and have a better chance of recalling that dream. The other thing that you can try doing is when you wake up, just stay in bed and for like the next 15 minutes and try and interact with elements of your dream. So you could do, so active imagination is actually really powerful during this time. You can actually try to re-enter your dream because you're sort of in that in-between stage during that time to interact with the elements in your dream that you'd like to get additional information about, additional clarification on. You can also see if other things come up during this time. So like let things float by and see if you can get in touch with the emotions a little bit more, the people, the scenes that you dreamt about during the night. So understanding the language of the subconscious, now that we're getting to the end of this, its symbols, its metaphors, emotions, archetypes, it greatly enhances our ability to work effectively with plant medicines. So as you develop your dictionary, plant teachers have more to use and more to pull from. And integration becomes quicker because you've been working on this interpretation. You've been creating this map. There's power that is discovered in learning this language that not only allows you to work with your subconscious nightly, but it also enhances the work with everything you do, including with the plants. The deeper your dream work, the more the integration experiences move into the dream spaces as well. So you get even more insight. For example, like with me during Dieta, the plants that I'm working with will oftentimes completely take over my dream space. It feels to me as if my subconscious steps aside and allows the plants to take over all my faculties to communicate their teachings. So dream work is a very important part of my Dieta work as well. I really credit that to the intention and the work I've done within my dream space. So of course, like I said, we wouldn't be the plant medicine people without going into plants that have supported the dream space. And this is by no means an exhaustive list, but I thought it would be really useful to share the plants that the plant medicine people, the coaches, love to use to enhance their dream work and sleep. And number one on that list is mugwort. It's a favorite of the plant medicine people coaches. Mugwort is a nervine regulating our nervous system and enhancing dream vividness and recall. Mugwort has a powerful way of connecting us to the spirit realms, connects us to waking consciousness, and it merges them. So we were talking about that interplay. It enhances the interplay. So we're awake for 16 hours. So it's connecting the other 8 hours to our consciousness, which has a huge impact on our growth, right? Mugwort can be traced back to cultures around the world, like European, Chinese, Native Americans. So her use is pretty universal. And she may also increase the frequency of lucid dreaming, which we didn't really cover here. But lucid dreaming is when you're interacting and you have control over the dream. So it's an amazing space where you can have this one-on-one conversation with your subconscious directly, and you get answers. So very, she definitely takes you to another dimension. Scientifically, mugwort is thought to stimulate the pineal gland, which makes sense when we talk about interdimensional travel. But also the pineal helps to regulate sleep and dreaming, right? So blue water lily, or blue lotus, as she's called. Blue lotus is my favorite dream work plant, and she's actually a psychoactive. And she has profound effects on the vividness of our dreams. She has the ability to promote relaxation. She's a sedative as well to help ease us into sleep. Her dream spaces are amazing. They're incredible. It brings our dreams into like high definition, and she enhances recall. She's an adaptogen, which means that she soothes the nervous system and eases tension, which makes it easier to enter into deeper stages of REM sleep when we dream. Bobinsana, another plant that we work with in dream space. Bobinsana has a very strong connection to the jungle, as you may already know. She's used to induce vivid dreams, and the Shipibo shamans use her to receive messages from spirits, ancestors, or nature, right? She also enhances recall. And finally, two that I wasn't as familiar with, but was brought to my attention, are the combination of reishi and lion's mane mushroom. They are a powerful dream enhancer together and recall enhancer. So the reishi has a calming effect, while the lion's mane enhances the dream and the recall of the dream. So it's pretty cool. Other plants that I want to talk about that provide relaxing effects. So they may not enhance dream vividness or recall, but they help us get into sleep. They may enhance our REM sleep, or they may help with cortisol levels. Sometimes cortisol levels, when they're wonky, they'll pop us out of sleep at like 2 a.m. If you get that 2 a.m. wake up call, that can be helped by some of these plants that work with cortisol. So ashwagandha, valerian root, lavender, passion flower, chamomile, lemon balm, licorice root, all of those help with our sleep and support our sleep. Ashwagandha is an adaptogen that regulates our nervous system. So again, it helps to support our entry into the dream space, keeps our physical bodies in a state that supports getting to REM states of sleep. It's definitely a powerful plant to help with this work. So that's it. I want to thank you for listening to this talk on the subconscious mind and dream work today. If you are interested in working with me one-on-one in a coaching capacity, or any of our wonderful coaches at Plant Medicine People, please navigate to our page at plantmedicinepeople.com, and you'll find us all under coaches. See our profiles, what we specialize in, and you can book directly there. Thank you so much.